We are arguing who is the leading Nooga centrist in Chattanooga, and I say that it's me, David Tulis, your host here on 92.7, and there's a contestant for this office. And what does he say?
Well, I say it's me, David, but I'll give you an easy second place.
Okay, he'll give me an easy second place, and we're talking with Dave Crockett, who is a former city council member and an environmentalist who, in a way, led the environmental city movement back in the late 1980s and 1990s, full of its visioning processes and getting the high and mighty to think in terms of the public good, and who ran for mayor just recently against Mayor Andy Burke. He stands here with his 5-gallon cowboy hat and making a shadow in our neon lit studio as the light comes in from the left. And behind us on our Facebook screen, there is the American flag at our studio here at Nooga Radio, 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4. That's high definition digital. 4 is channel 4 on 95.3. Not music. We don't have time for music. We have only, I think, the best offer in the way of analyses. Dave is a kind of minister without portfolio on the high-speed rail project, one he says he continues to work on, having had in the past few weeks since we chatted last with him, 4 meetings about it, trying to build consensus for a bullet train between Chattanooga and places north of Atlanta. But I don't want to get to that, Dave. I really want to ask you about something that has just befuddled me, and that is the proposed change in the stormwater rules that says changing a statute requiring 1.6 inches of retaining power by builders along the Chickamauga Creek and shifting that down to 1 inch, where a property has to retain only 1 inch of runoff in a heavy rain event rather than 1.6 inches. And Chris Long, your former competitor for the mayor's seat, says that that would be a good thing. And I'd like to ask you, what is the listener to think about this proposed change in the ordinance that prints out at about 25 pages? Dave Crockett.
Well, let me start back at a couple of things. One, I'll answer to the term environmentalist, capitalist, regionalist, urbanist, economist. I'll answer to any of those with an ist on it. But I frankly have never believed in ist, because that says that you only look at one thing. You look at it intensely, and you are a single-dimensional thinker. And what we tried to do in Chattanooga was establish a place where we thought in multi-dimensions, and it was every time we spent $1, we wanted to, in the city government, we wanted to make the economy better, measurable. How many jobs did you create? Oh, we wanted to make education better. Every dollar. How did this improve education at every level? And the third thing was, how do you make the environment better? How did you create something that improved the living environment where we are? And then the fourth thing was, how did you make the community better? And how did you improve equity, meaning that everybody, we didn't trickle down anything. We empowered everybody to have an improvement. Now, that's important to start with, because, you know, all of this, sometimes when you hear the word sustainability or any of these other things, you focus down on environment, and then environment leads to a discussion of regulations, and then the next discussion is one versus the other. It's either the economy or the environment. It's either the economy or the neighborhood. We either get the jobs. If we destroy the neighborhood, that's one thing. If we destroy the community and the environment, that's another thing. If we think in single dimensions, and that's what got Chattanooga to where it was, because we used to say,
You mean where it is or where it was prior to the creation of the environmental city concept?
And well, the environmental city, I never liked that. I like sustainable city because it's a whole different thing. It's not about the environment. It's about the economics, about education, about community, and about environment. But the big thrust was, how do we become this one little city, one of the most important cities in the country, if not the world? Because, everybody's going to have bigger universities, more research, going to be doing something special. But the way you lead is to be doing things in a brand new way. And we thought back in the 80s that everybody was going to change. We were on the cusp of something where everybody was going to change everything that they were doing. The way we made carpet, and that has become true. They now have the greatest in sustainability programs because they look at all four of those things when they make carpet and relate to the community. But every single thing about every single thing was going to change. And we were going to be the place where that was, where we didn't have all the answers, but a place where all the answers would be found. Now, in the early 90s, part of that was stormwater. And the Congress came down with an unfunded mandate and passed it and mandated that we spend $80 million to keep Chattanooga, that our stormwater and our combined sewer overflows, our sewers have both sewage in them and stormwater. And when the heavy rain event, then they overflow and all the raw sewage goes into the Tennessee River. We had a mandate in the early 90s, but it was unfunded. It led to a Republican takeover of the Congress because it was unfunded mandate. Federal government didn't offer a nickel. They just offered a mandate and said, if you don't do it, we're going to fine you $50,000 a day. We had to vote for a tax increase. I know what it's like to vote for a tax increase, where you have the ideologues who don't vote for it when you have no choice but to vote for it. So we got a skinny 5 vote to pass it. And
all right, let's make it down to, instead of 10 steps, let's make it 3 steps to the question about 1.6 inches or 1 inch. How do we get to that question?
We had to pass this stormwater. But if you started thinking, I'm going to create jobs, I'm going to figure out education, I'm going to improve everything with every dollar I spend. We had a chance to combine our landscaping ordinances with our stormwater ordinances and do something called green infrastructure, something that was not being done anywhere. We brought the best people in the world here, literally, to teach us how that could be done. And we had a chance to write our regulations that way. We didn't. What we did was we put together some...
Under whose administration did that not take place?
That was in Gene Roberts' administration, but the public works people, where we looked at it and people says, well, this is not a strategic issue. This is a regulatory issue. So we'll give it to the engineers and we'll let them write something from ground up. Nobody in the city knew anything about it. The Chamber of Commerce, the home builders, the contractors, everybody else, they just knew they had new regulation and they were going to have to pay more. City Council didn't understand it. They just knew that we had...
That's one step. All right, you got 2 more steps to get to the question.
We're exactly at the same place we were 30 years ago or 25 years ago. We hadn't changed much. We had the most aggressive, progressive, not in a political sense, program proposed in the 90s. And it was to involve every single organization, every single person in creating a solution, not just to the water, but one that would help us green up, clean up, and create jobs. We thought we could create 5,000 jobs. Well, we turned that back over to Public Works. They came up with a little code that just aggravated everybody. And my old famous saying of don't try to teach mules to play the violin. It sounds awful, and it irritates the mules. Oh, but we did that. And so we had people out here digging holes in the ground, putting riprap in it, taking away great swaths of usable land, making it ugly, making it expensive. And we continued to, from a civil engineering standpoint, to build a city that was hard, dirty, scary, and expensive. Real good criteria. And
okay, that's 2 steps to my question. You got one step left to answer my question.
We're here to the very same place. Over the last period of time, from the early 90s back to right now, I would guess we've wasted $100 million. We've created great pits in the ground. I remember a big contest at the argument at the city council over spending $20,000 on Blue Boy. There were nice rhinoceros over at Coolidge Park, and that took 2 months. About spending $20,000 on art. Where else would you put a blue rhinoceros but at a menagerie like over at Coolidge Park? But there was 5 minutes discussion over a pit in the ground right next to it that cost nearly $2 million. $5 million, and we built those things. Well,
the city council thought obviously that was something it didn't have authority over, could not contest it, just had to dig it, but they did have discretion on the
they had discretion,
the art object, and so that's where they gave their discretion.
They had the discretion over the other.
They did,
and they do now.
All right, so
we could have created a way to alleviate the runoff that resulted in the combined sewer overflow. We could have done it in an alternate way. We're pursuing alternatives then that were put in place by the in the Roosevelt, by the federal programs. So WPA, building a ditch across Chattanooga Golf and Country Club. We went back and rebuilt it just like they built it. And the point is to the public that they hear stormwater, they don't know what that means. Number 2, well, they hear the 1.6 versus 1, and they don't know where to bark at the moon or go blind. If people that are building something like the home builders will say the difference of that is how much money it costs to mitigate that much. So it means something to them. But for the rest of us, most of us don't know what that means. Here's what I would say, David. When you start off with a vision and write regulations, and you start off with a vision and you said, if you're going to spend $1, whether it's doing the Chattanoogan or doing stormwater, it's not a bit of difference to me. The Chattanoogan wasted $40 million. Wasted. We should have never been in that business. We had a better plan, but we did that unnecessarily and wound up with a $40 million losing proposition or more. We've done stormwater where they've got a $200 million mandate. We should get, and there is a way where we could get a benefit of not 200 million, but 500 million. We'll get a $500 million. Let me just,
all right, I get you. You were going to take 10 steps to get to my answer,
okay.
and I gave you 3, and you've already shot past. Okay, so here's the question again. Let's cut in, Dave. Or we got some background.
Right.
So let's cut it into this question. Okay, so there's a flap in a dispute in the city, and the question is, should the city council change the ordinance to allow 1 inch of an obligation that the owner of the property along the creek has to be able to retain 1 inch, whereas now he has to retain 1.6 inches. It costs more to have a hole that deep on your property to save that, to keep that water from running into the creek. But I'm not sure how the expenses go in building that, or if a 1 inch rule is cheaper for the builder and the buyer of the property or not. What is the listener to think about that particular issue, and then give your answer, and then back off from it and say, well, why I think you're saying it's not relevant somehow. It doesn't really matter because of these other issues.
You referenced
that
Chris Long, and Chris Long said he could take care of 1.6 inches as easy as he could take care of one. And so complexity of doing
former candidate for mayor.
He's
an architectural advisor.
You don't dig. I don't want to see holes. I don't want to see holes dug in the ground. I don't want to see people out giving up a fourth of their property to dig a dead burn hole and put riprap or something else in the bottom of it. That's a stupid solution. That doesn't add value to their property. Yeah, I don't want to see
very annoying architectural problem.
And I don't want to see us. I don't want to see us doing mitigation fees or fees that what we're doing is just creating the only jobs we're growing are at public works, where you're growing a big complex of 150 people. The idea was to grow jobs in the community, and very easily could have grown 5,000 jobs.
The idea of stormwater regulations?
Stormwater regulations could have created 5,000 jobs in the community.
How's that? How?
Well, David, what I had proposed
in 3 sentences.
3 sentences.
Go ahead. How would stormwater regulations have created any jobs at all? I don't understand why you would say that.
Stormwater regulations are just money. And I look for things where to build off of. You start with a vision, David, the top of the box. We're sitting here looking at one piece of a jigsaw puzzle. We have no idea, or nobody has presented a vision of what is the top of the box. What were the most important things in the city? Was it stormwater? Hell, I thought it was to green up the city, to improve the number of jobs, to make inner city neighborhoods green, clean, and safe, and give people jobs. I thought it was to improve education. I thought it was to do things that were innovative.
Well, you ran on those positions, Dave.
And I could do them. I could do them today, David. But the bottom line is, you want to know you want to pick up this one piece out of a 2,000 piece jigsaw puzzle and hold it up and say, what do you think? This piece or this piece? Well, what's the top of the box look like, David?
You mean the image on the front?
Right.
That says how it fits together?
How it fits together. Do you know? Do you know how?
I don't know. Okay. I don't.
Nobody in Chattanooga does, because there's not a coherent vision. And if your coherent vision says, I'm going to create jobs in those neighborhoods, I'm going to make the city green, clean, and safe. Now, how I'm going to do that? I'm going to break the city down into, I'm going to give that to every group in the city. And we're going to spend $250 million. One and only one objective of this $250 million is to clean our stormwater and keep from putting 500 million gallons of untreated sewage into the Tennessee River.
In a nutshell, how is that to be done different from what we're doing now? Is that the goal now? And
number one,
do you propose something that would be different?
The only people involved in this are the regulators, Public Works, and a few professional associations who are looking at it from a very myopic viewpoint, where they look at it just for how it affects them. That's the only people. The only involvement, the rest of us, me as a taxpayer, you, community leaders, communities, whatever, our only job in this whole thing is to write checks. We just write checks. We pay a stormwater fee. But we have no other active role in this. You wrote a regulation that was just a technical thing. You had, when I look for things in the city budget that I could use to transform the entire city, I look for 3 things. Things that have money, momentum, or mandate. And stormwater fits in that. And second, that they touch every business, organization, and citizen in the city of Chattanooga. And then you get together and you say, we're going to spend $250 million. When we get to the end of this, I want to have X number of jobs created. I want to involve the schools as much as possible to have practical.
Okay, Dave, we have half a minute.
Right.
Get
to this little
1 inch or 1.6 inches. You're suggesting that it's an irrelevant question.
What I'm saying is it is almost irrelevant. Now,
insofar as it is relevant, which is better? What should the city council do? What do you recommend from a city council member?
It will not make a difference. Politically, you will pass the 1 inch. There isn't a discussion.
I think the council will.
Everybody on the council who's running for re-election will vote for 1 inch. That's what they'll vote for. Whether it's 1/6 or 1 inch, it won't change the future of Chattanooga. 1 inch will be what will pass.
This is David Tulis, and we're hearing a projection from Dave Crockett, the minister without portfolio on the train issue, and the number 2 leading Nooga centrist in Chattanooga. He's not arguing with me, so we are glad that you're giving us a couple minutes of your time. Dave Crockett, David Tulis, 92.7 FM, local economy and the free market. That's my argument. Love your neighbor and buy local. David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and